welcome to this episode of Focus on Parliament. It is right after the celebrations of the Liberation Day, the 37th year of the NRM government. And we want to look at whether Parliament is constantly championing the needs of the people. I don't want us to only just look at the 11th Parliament, but Parliament as an entity and as an institution. And we want to also divert our minds towards the future, because it doesn't make sense to sit in time without projecting the future. And today, to help me have this conversation, I have from Parliament Watch, Mr. Chemonges Timothy. Welcome to the show, Timothy.
Thank you so much.
It's good to always have you.
Good morning to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And next to Timothy, I have Honorable Rose Obigah from Tegero District, MP for Tegero District. Welcome, Rose.
Thank you.
And Happy New Year, because I've not seen you in a while.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you too. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. And next to her from the NRM Secretariat, I have Mr. Awich, Pollar. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, viewers.
Yes. And I'm going to borrow from your wealth of knowledge, because from where I am seated, you've seen more. And there's the African proverb says, what the elders see while sitting, the young cannot see while standing. And it is very important to tap into that knowledge, looking for 37 years of the NRA government and the liberation struggle. But to set off this conversation, the critical question that we want to interrogate is whether Parliament as an institution is championing the needs of the people. I begin with you, Timothy.
Thank you so much, Tricia, and good morning to you, our viewers, wherever you're watching us from. Tricia, first of all, I think to set pace for this conversation, it's good to understand the parameters which Parliament operates, and because Parliament is established essentially under the Article 79 of the Constitution, and also it gives it a clear mandate in which it's supposed to operate. Largely within that context, the first role that the Constitution discharges to the Parliament is to legislate. That means making laws. Two is to appropriate the national cake and ensure that the different agencies in government and even local government receive a fair share of the national cake and operate in the same. Three is the element of oversight, that you've discharged money and you've appropriated it. You go now and follow up and see that is there value for money? Is it serving the interest that we did? And lastly is the representation, a very key role, that they ensure that they represent the views of the constituents. But to give the current context, because you have Parliament doesn't operate as a singular institution. There are other entities that support its role. You have the executive, but also you have the judiciary, because it's a check and balance system. And you also want to look at Parliament not as the 11th Parliament, because it's there seems to be some sort of link. Each of those parliaments that you would want to highlight contribute towards each other. And in my assessment, largely is looking at what Parliament has done so far. You can really say that they have done fair within the context. I know that what comes out usually is the drama sometimes and some of the funny things that happen. But if you go and look at it in a qualitative manner, you'll notice that there is work which is ongoing, service delivery. There is accountability, though it's not being done in a manner that it's not being demanded that as it should be. In terms of legislation, you've seen Parliament passing very many laws. There are still issues in terms of operationalizing the same laws to ensure that it serves the interests of the people. But more critically, I think that to determine really the link between Parliament and the people, I think there are things that you would want to look at to determine that. There are elements to do with transparency, there are elements to do with it being able to be the voice of the people. And other than that, while Parliament is serving the interest of the people, it must be seen to be doing that, not just doing it at a national level. Yeah. People must feel that our Parliament, our members of Parliament, are serving our interests. I know that the frustrations are because Parliament, because of its misunderstood role. Sometimes people overput all the blames, all the burden that ideally should go even in other areas is lumped on Parliament. But also that's slightly contributed by them, because at the time they are seeking the mandate, I think they rely on other areas other than what they are going to do at Parliament. And so if I was really to score the current Parliament, I think I would say that they are doing well. However, there is more to demand from them. To whom much is given, much is expected. And I think that Parliament should not view people who demand for more as very aggressive or as people with bad faith. It's just that we're demanding for better in terms of leadership, in terms of demanding for accountability. You will see the Auditor General's report clearly highlighting a lot of mess within some of our government agencies, in terms of loss of money, in terms of value for money, in terms of recruitment, and all these other elements that the Auditor General highlights in his report. You notice that there's a bit of a gap, and the entity that is supposed to support in this area is Parliament. You've seen the debate on adoption of reports. These are Auditor General's report, and there's a conversation that they should be adopted wholesomely. Those are the recommendations of the Auditor General. You see, we've looked at other committees only handling four reports. Others have handled more. Others are. It's just that the public should be able to demand for better. Yes. It's because the public has that expectation, and we can't be going below that. Yeah.
And interestingly so, and maybe also to bring Honorable Obigah into the conversation, when we talk of critical mass, I have noted there are areas the people of Uganda constantly highlight in regard to saying this is where our money is and this is what we want to follow. And then you go on the floor of Parliament and it is something that is not, critically highlighted. I'll give, for example, during the drone endemic that has now actually become normalized, a lot of people ask questions of where are people being taken. Fast forward, recently, I think the whole of last week or the past 2 weeks, Ugandans have been critically asking the question of how are we going to deal with the rot and corruption that is happening at the airport, at the Entebbe airport. And then that feeds into the COSASA report on the Uganda Airlines. And rightly so, because there was a lot of money invested, Ugandans' taxpayer money invested in making sure that the airline runs, that airplanes are purchased. And so when you look at, the interest of the people vis-a-vis the work that is happening in Parliament, how do we reconcile this disconnect in, helping people understand what's going on? How do we go forward? And how do we deal with the critical issues that are in the gallery or in the public?
Yeah, thank you so much. I also want to thank Ugandans for asking so much every other time, for being so critical on Parliament. Yeah. This does not mean we take offense when they ask critical issues and they expect the answers there and then. I really want to say this. I don't sit on COSASE, nor do I sit on these other committees of budget and so forth. I sit on legal and parliamentary affairs and human rights. All the reports that came to our committee were dealt with. All the human rights issues that were raised were honestly handled, and we had to go a step further to interrogate and even interview, bring the complainants and question them. Honestly, it was so embarrassing to find so many people who were purportedly to have been tortured And at the end of it, they were not touched. There's this lady who is now in Canada, and she claimed, you know, she was gang raped when she was detained, even to show us where this detention facility is. She failed, yet she said she lost a baby and she was brought on the compound to help her to bury this. You know, they were not coordinated. You find a lot of missing links. Much as Ugandans expect so much to be done at the shortest time, you know, courts are also waiting to see where you have erred both in fact and in law. So we have to follow procedure. And you have to go to the root of everything. So to me, I think we have not lost it all. Where we have not got the reports like the Kosase report on the Uganda Airlines. I'm also one of those MPs waiting for it on the floor. I wouldn't want to discuss this because it must come. It would be an insult to this country not to bring that report and debate and discuss and take it to its logical conclusion. We really have to be shameful to run away from facts. We must come out honestly and do work for this country and show to our people that, yes, you gave your mandate to me. I'm here to give it its attention and I will serve you with all my ability. So for me, I wouldn't speak for other committees, honestly. I'll speak for my committee for human rights and I will speak for committee of legal. There is no single law, or I mean bill that has come to us and we have failed to scrutinize. Just, is it Wednesday? Monday, we were in the hotel handling 90 plus laws that are supposed to be scrapped, they're supposed to be improved. And even we questioned and said, no, this is not exhaustive. We still have more. Can you go back? Yeah, Law Reform Commission and bring us a complete list and we do thorough work. The whole day we sat and burned ourselves. So it's good once you're assigned on a committee, you really do your best. So the committees I sit on, I don't have anything. And what was given to us in human rights was really volumes. So if we can do it, then Kosase can do it. I suspect they're doing their best. I'll really wait for them on the floor of Parliament. They cannot debate their own report on, on the floor. We shall debate it for them. Thank you.
Oh, that's interesting. Because the critical question always is, are people being heard? Because, you know, as the conversation happens on Twitter and as accountability is being asked for, even in the public, you wonder if, you know, the tenets of the Constitution are being heard. And so when a report comes and, you know, the dismissal to debate it is because it leaked, it begs whether people are being heard. Because once, regardless of whether the report leaked, it has critical questions on corruption, on accountability, and on service delivery. But maybe to also bring Ms. Awich into the conversation, the Attorney General report was, and I want to credit the Attorney General for always doing the hard work. I think he's the one person we never really highlight in this conversation because he begins a conversation that happens in that committee.
Did you say Attorney General or Auditor General?
The Auditor General, sorry, the Auditor General. Because when the Auditor General released these reports, it's that they've taken time, they've audited, they've come to the logical conclusion that we need to have further steps taken in regards to these entities because they're public institutions. And so to have, you know, an omnibus, you know, approval and scrutiny of this, misses a scrutiny of these reports, how do we, you know, have, and not just select committees, you know, come and dive into these other reports, but how do we just make sure that the public entities in this Auditor General reports are not only just audited, but also, you know, have a cleanup happen post reports, post the committee sittings, post the parliamentary debates?
Yes, I know the due weight you're giving to Auditor General, but I think there's since the gist of this matter is the holistic parliament, I would rather you give me a minute or two to respond to the question that you gave him.
Please.
He gave a rating of how he would rate Parliament's performance. And I think I would disagree with him. First of all, I have served in a UN body for 8 years in Geneva. Call it a judicial body kind of, because we are like judges. We're a panel of 9. Now, we were doing work to see states' compliance, because states appear before us to show that they are complying to the international conventions that they have ratified. You're free like a judge. You can do what you want. You can be absent. You can do what. But I can assure you, in this kind of body in UN, for the public session, because we have what we call pre-session, where we meet civil society to understand what happens in a particular country. For example, if Uganda is appearing, civil society of Uganda would go there. So when the committee meets them in confidence, in secret, in closed door. There you don't have public. But in public hearing, when the government appeared, like recently Attorney General appeared, that's when you heard that some ladies attacked Attorney General, our Attorney General. In the room, there's World Health, because they want to see rights to health. There's UNICEF, they want to see right to children. There's World Bank, there's everybody. I can assure you, they have permanent representation there. And because we're elected by General Assembly from New York, you can be sure that every member's performance will affect him in the next election. Because this body sits there and follow individual performance. And since 193 countries will elect you, you will find that they also have a right to give you a view that in the 4 years we have been here,
performed. Mr.
Awich, no. So it looks like in our parliamentary system, we don't have who assesses who. Okay? We have like him, and we have the group, I don't know whether it's the same thing, the group of Pollar, which used to give scorecard, but that is not enough. Then the voters are watching you. So we have in parliament what I would really call excessive immunity that needs a lot of self-discipline. Because even if I stepped in for a minute and go out, who will count me, call me to order? So that's what I have with problem. One, we have a problem with the electoral processes. We have laws that guard the electoral processes. Like it's a crime to buy votes, or it's a crime to give things. Do we follow that? So this impacts on the quality of election of members. So it therefore cloud up the electoral process, and therefore gives room for members who enter there who shouldn't be. We also have perception of size. There's a debate to say, as a country, is this size not too big? Do they really have time to discuss? Does every member get time to look into this? So the size of our parliament critically impacts on the performance. There is a perception out there that the size is big for that number. I'm told you are given 3 minutes. 3 minutes, and it seems like the microphone automatically closes itself. So you really find that there's not enough time for debate, and this impacts on the quality. There's also public perception. Somebody has to find it out there. There's a public perception out there that parliament has a lot of element of transactional activities. Complaints time and again, this needs verification. Again and again, people think that even a permanent secretary, to have a budget pass or something, people think they are transactional. I call upon members to verify these perceptions. They may be true, but they may not be true. But this impacts on the parliament. Then the aspect of issues at hand. Perception out there seem to think that parliament at the moment takes priority to issues that they don't think deserve priorities. Some even think that members of parliament, including leadership, are taking personal interest and interweaving it with official matters, quote it and make it look like official. These perceptions exist, and we need to address it, and the house rulers or leaders need to take a serious concern. How about the attendance? As I already said, I have appeared before their committee. She was their committee on human rights because they were reviewing human rights during the electoral process. And therefore, as a party, we had to put our views on what we thought about human rights. But sometimes you find taking off of a committee, you find the chairman is there, and you wait 1 hour, members are not there. The second hour is when you find 2 or 3.
Oh, sure.
The lucky discipline ones, like we were lucky to find out. If every committee was to work in consonance with the rule of procedure of majority, I dare that very few would get that, including the plenary. Including the plenary. There are concerns that many other legislations have been passed without due respect to the plenary. Sure. So you have lack of quorum in the committee, you have lack of quorum in the plenary. So all this affects the quality and the role of the committee. How about a constituency appearance? I think there was a research done to find out how many of your voters know your telephone number. A research was done and found that many MPs, their voters lack contact because the easiest contact would have been a phone call. So they did a research and found that very few MPs have telephone numbers who are known by the voters. The other thing is a matter of rule of procedure. The parliamentary rule of procedure is clear, but we have known, or there's a perception out there that rules are being breached. We have had situations where a bill is passed even without an... For example, the rule says that if you rule high to the contrary, no, there's always a unison or a chorus answer. Then the prerogative is on the chair, the speaker, to say the highest, the nay have it or the no have it. Now, if the members feel that there's a ruling to the contrary, you are supposed to stand up and you are counted. But we have seen these rules breached. The speaker rules goes out. It has happened twice. The speaker rules as you stand up to contest that no, we are. We have seen even situations where a speaker leaves without adjourning. Then you are told, by the way, you have left, you have not adjourned. They say the meeting, go back and adjourn it. So, Parliament is the temple of democracy. It's a very central arm of government. With all these factors in place, you do not expect a good performance. And that's why I said at the beginning that I was not comfortable with this rating. We really, really need to do a lot in as far as legislation concerned, including constitutional amendment, to expect that good. Otherwise, we shall have this and we are not going to achieve that much. So for me, I really feel, and I share perceptions with members outside there, that Parliament asks more questions than they take it. Now, to the Auditor General, of course, the Auditor General would put in the view of the oversight of Parliament. The oversight of Parliament. We do believe that Auditor General puts in a lot of investment in terms of time, in terms of brain. They recruit the best personnel, and their report we thought would guide. And because basically why it goes to Parliament is because we want the other eye, but also for the oversight role. So Auditor General seems to have done its part, and I know they are very unpopular among the stakeholders there. But there they are. So I pray that Parliament puts that priority in consuming or disposing reports that come, and it would help the government and the people of Uganda.
But the critical question for me is, after the reports have been debated and actions approved, do we have a process that looks at the post-report narrative or post-report trajectory? What happens to the public entities, you know, highlighted in these reports, pinned out in these reports? Is there action that we can go back to Parliament and report that in regards to the UNRWA, this is the action that was taken, this is the follow-up that has been done, and this is what the report was able, in the recommendations that were given.
I think it's a procedural aspect. I don't know whether any of my colleagues are more acquainted to the procedure thereafter than me.
It comes with the recommendations.
Yes.
Such a report comes with recommendations, and Parliament adopts. Those they don't want to adopt, they bring reasons why. So before a report is presented, then you can't debate it. I don't know what is in the recommendations. That's what, you know, by the way, I've never had this level of engagement. There is too much work in Parliament. So it depends on every other member of Parliament. You get yourself abreast. First of all, the thickness of the documents. You must be a workaholic. You must love reading. And for me, or to me, whatever is being lashed on Parliament, maybe people's expectations are different. You see, we have this other issue we're handling. And then the other one is coming. We have not lost it. Then somebody says, no, this one is lost. We should have done this one first. Then, no, it's according to when it's totally done and it's served on plate. That's when you eat the food. You can't eat raw food. I do not want to agree that the report of Uganda Airlines was just sent away because of one aspect of...
I hear you.
One aspect of leakage. No. First of all, even when the president appoints ministers, there is leakage. In this country, everything leaks. So is it the correct information that leaked? Or what? Is there some correction? Or there was some missing gap? Definitely that report has to come back to Parliament for debate. Otherwise, how do we explain to Ugandans that we decided to leave this? And COSASA does not only have one report to bring to Parliament. They have a number of them. So if you have not finished and say we need a little time to conclude this part, and then and the Speaker asks, why one? Why not many more to come? For me, I think it's not an issue. These reports are going to come. We're going to debate and put every Ugandan to rest.
Just to follow up on this, I know my colleague would want to say something about what happens to the product.
Yes.
But I just want to pick up on the issue of the leakage of report. I did not address my mind exactly to this provision because we have a law which provides for access to information. It is called Access to Information Act.
Yes.
Basically, any Ugandan is free to access any information.
True.
The exception are thereby stated if it jeopardizes national security.
True.
So I'm wondering what kind of leakage comes in a report which does not qualify under this law or which contravenes Access to Information Act. For example, if the report was saying the ED was wrong and it was leaked, is that so detrimental?
Yeah. And maybe also on that note.
So I want us to really address Parliament mind on leakage of information to look at which is that rule or procedure that provides for information not to be leaked and what is leaked vis-a-vis the law which provides that every Ugandan has access to information. For example, if I wrote to Parliament, to this clerk to Parliament and say, I am told the Committee on COSASI has a draft report on Uganda Airlines. The purpose of this letter is to ask you to provide me a report on the draft. What would the clerk say? Would it
you don't need raw data. You need a finished product.
Me, I want a report. I'm the consumer. It is not you. I am the one who has asked, so I know what I want.
Parliament sits at a level of High Court.
So which rule is that?
Parliament sits at the level of High Court.
So which rule now provides that don't give raw data?
Yeah, but I mean, how do you give people raw data when you have not consumed?
Maybe also the critical question, and I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you, Mr. Awich, because the narrative was this report was discussed in the scrutiny of the public. The committee sessions were open to the public, and as such, the report is a reflection of the questions from the committee. And so the discrepancy a lot of people are struggling with is what invalidates a report from being discussed, even when the report is present, simply because there is a narrative of it was leaked. does leakage, necessitate a lack of debate on that?
That's why I said it cannot be only the leakage. There must have been something deeper than that.
True.
And that report cannot just be dust-binned because there was a leakage. No. So long as what leaked was the truth,
yes,
then how do you dust-bin it?
Exactly.
To me, because the time this report came, I was on official duty in Accra. So I did not participate. But what I know, all our reports leak, by the way. All of them leak.
True.
But what leaks must be the right thing. If it's what buyer says and so forth, then if a committee is sent back to correct it. On the floor of Parliament, when I read the handset, they did not disagree. They said, okay, let's work on this. But now when they went and they started on social media, that is where the problem is. When you are told to go and do work, and then you stand up and must oblige to the speaker, and then you go, then you start building anger from outside. It doesn't really make sense. All of us err up, but we should say sorry and do the right thing. For me, I know that report must come back, because what shall we tell
the people
of Uganda?
True.
Why haven't we discussed this? I would beg Ugandans to be patient,
especially
and
with a lot
come
of stake in the Uganda Airlines. A lot of taxpayer money is there on action taken by Parliament, because I worry that we have very nice reports. I've read some of the reports and the recommendations there, all from some of these committees, and if implemented, we would have money refunded, we would have systems working. But how do we follow from the point of recommendations taken? What actions can we look that are happening in the public eye or even in the public institutions that support these reports?
So, Tricia, to just say that the action taken reports that you're mentioning, they are a supplementary action to what has been there. We've had what is called Treasury Memorandums. So Treasury Memorandums were the previous existing accountability mechanisms of the Auditor General's recommendations. That after the Auditor General has conducted whatever he's doing, he's presented the report to Parliament. Parliament considers those. Of course, it's in the previous times it's close to impossible, or it's slightly harder for committees, especially for the accountability committees, to complete all the reports of the agencies. And actually, if the accountability committees, say COSASE, wanted numbers, they would get it. Actually, of the 107 entities that the Auditor General were referred to COSASE, they are small entities with very, very small reports, that if COSASE needed numbers, they can actually go up to 40. But I think sometimes in the wisdom of the committee, probably they choose
the bigger ones,
and probably of where the attention would be attracted more. Even in the previous parliaments, we've seen the adoption of the pending reports, that those which were, because eventually they should be able to translate to the Treasury Memorandums as a form of accountability before the budget is eventually is passed. And so the thing, especially for the 11th Parliament, you've seen what you're mentioning, the action taken reports.
Yes.
It is the level of seriousness in terms of how they are considered is lacking, but it's a good move. You've seen the effort and the energy, the commitment that the members had, especially when they were censuring the minister. You saw their commitment, and very, very, very strong.
Oh, they attended in numbers.
But also see that the issue was not in the censuring. At least for many of us, it was how the selective way in which such attention is put.
The priority.
Call it priority. I think if the same effort is actually translated to other matters. So we have currently human rights matters that are pending, for which Honorable mentions. I have an issue regarding the report. The report was generally good, especially for the Human Rights Committee, but I was concerned that the committee went ahead and found that there are no safe houses in the country. And I know you have a response to that.
There were no what?
There are no safe houses that the committee identified. And there was a justification that the committee went to investigate. They tried asking the people who had alleged, and there was none. The point really for me is this: as far as action taken reports and the recommendation of the House, it is how the House has chosen deliberately to apply their efforts selectively. If they did that, if they did
for all entities,
for all the entities, because you're the one who distributes money. You distribute and disburse the money. You share the money. We have the certificate of gender compliance, which is good. We have certificate for environment, which is supposed to accompany, and many other. I don't know if there are other certificates, but the House, as we mentioned previously, have a higher burden, and there is a higher responsibility on them.
True.
And the attention and the concern which is being raised here is, while there are many issues, you see, Parliament, as far as its operation, there are rules, there are practices, and there is a certain precedent that has been set in terms of how they conduct themselves. But also, Parliament is a house of interest. It is driven by interest. While we would want to mention rules and what have you and those other things, interest drives the House. And that's why you will want to see, you will see that in specific matters, there is huge attendance. There are matters which are very serious, and there is very limited.
On education, few people show up.
So it's largely interest.
Well, maybe before you come,
Yes.
Honestly, on actions taken, we have Prime Minister's time. Like the previous presentations are given, each time we have a committee presentation, there is time given for the Prime Minister and the ministers responsible on actions taken. And after some time, the clerk gets back on which actions have been taken. On this issue of safe houses, I want to be honest to all Ugandans. We have these detention centers. We viewed and reviewed all of them. If you have been in a detention center or in quotes safe house for over 3 months, you mean you cannot tell me the location? Because where we end up with these victims is a detention center. It's a detention center. What was called safe houses previously, maybe in the 10th Parliament, were there. They were all closed. We cannot now go and start envisaging something which is not there. We asked even the media, take us. Can we get where these safe houses?
I wonder, because are these locations this close to the victims that are held there?
If you are detained here for 3 months plus, because these people are talking about 5 months, 6 months, get it? And at first they would deny, oh, our eyes are tied when we are being taken for interrogation. Then as you go deeper, no. Even we would serve food and sit on the compound during the day. They will bring us out so that we take a rest from the darkness. No, they have lights. From that total darkness to, yes, the rooms have lights. How many were you? Well, I think we were 11. So out of those 11, if I stay with you here 6 months, you mean I will never ask you where you come from, where you were picked from, who are your parents? Honestly, we just keep quiet like this. Were you able to talk? At first, no. No, we chat. We chat because it's underground. Where you find, honestly, I wouldn't want to lie on my rosary. It doesn't help me. But even then, you would have helped us and said, okay, this is a peculiar one. We went and even saw our colleagues. Privately, we removed the prison warders and said, we want to talk to them. And what they told us is nothing but where they were first kept and then brought. And we went there. It is a normal detention center. If you put me in Arua prisons, And then later on, you transfer me down in the Arua prisons. From police cells to Arua prisons. Will I call this police cell a safe house?
Sorry to deviate the conversation to
safe
Yeah, but
houses.
of course, this shows Parliament is not serious.
To mention that there are two things. Actually, during when the committee was investigating the matter, they were denied access. Not once, not
I
twice.
saw that. Yes, I saw that.
In some, I don't know, some places. Two, the late Minister of Security.
What was the previous committee,
the 10th Parliament.
The 10th Parliament. But for us, we refused.
That is the Minister of Security with access to information and knowledge.
Yes.
You would know that he has some privilege to access information. He confirms, he comes before the committee and actually says that this practice is not just in Uganda. It's practice across the globe. That safe houses are there for the interest of the people. We keep you there in your safety, for your safety. So the committee actually comes during the report.
And writes a report.
Yeah, and members raised that concern. Is it true that there are no safe houses? Honorable Obigah actually got and gave information. He gave a point of information and narrated what she has just said of how people could not disclose and what have you. But in terms of the debate about safe houses, whether they are not there or whether they are there, I think Parliament has a role to play in ensuring that.
And maybe because as Mr. Awich comes in, my concern in this narrative is we have the preamble of the Constitution of Uganda that says we, the people. And unfortunately, when you speak on interests, I feel for a long time, the interests of the people get lost in the politics of the day. And so it's critical, and maybe also that is where I want you to come in. Are the people being heard? When we speak about absence in the constituencies, that also translates in the fact that the voices of the people are missing on the floor of Parliament. Are the people being heard or represented on the floor of Parliament in passing legislation, in having critical issues dealt with, but also in having service delivery extended into their constituencies? And I think that is where I want you to come in, because I sense a disconnect. Because at some point, in as much as the Tegero people may see the work that you're doing, the people of Mukono most probably have not seen their MP on the floor of Parliament in a while. And they have no narrative of what is going on. How are we being represented? Are they being heard?
Yes, yeah, that's a serious concern. But just a word or two on action taken. Yeah. Because if no action is taken, it's what will lead to a conclusion that Parliament is not doing much.
Exactly.
Now, on action taken, it is surrounded by, first of all, by the three arms of government. If you think in the ideal or the theoretical world is that do your part, let others to do their part. It means therefore Parliament is just there. Because this now moves further to the idea that Parliament resolutions are persuasive. Some people think that, to the point that even when you express your views on a censure motion, it's simply persuasive. So it now moves further to what actions do you take? Is your action persuasive? Or your action is biting? Now, then it also combined with report to who?
True.
Who is Parliament reporting to? Unless it is phrased in specific drafting of a recommendation. For example, can a recommendation come and say, we recommend that so and so should be prosecuted? Is there such a thing?
Have you seen our action?
Yeah. So this is what I was saying, that it also depends on the drafting now.
Yeah.
Because it's not automatic that, for example, Parliament will report to judiciary, prosecute so and so, or Parliament will report to the president, do this and this. And this is surrounded with the idea that Parliament resolution is persuasive. Now, true, it has power of high court. Especially during procedural aspect, in terms of summoning of the witnesses, it has that power. But to what extent that the power of parliament looks like a power of the High Court, apart from summoning witness or apart from procedural aspect. Okay? So, it therefore makes it a little cloudy for actions of parliament in this respect. If an Auditor General, at its own initiative, apart from the report, can prosecute, or if the evidence of the Auditor General can be picked either by CID or by IGG to do prosecution itself, I would find it okay. Because once it gets to Parliament, you then submerge it into this whole thing of a Parliament resolution being persuasive and the ambiguity of recommendations. Whether recommendations are recommendation specific, whether it depends on the drafting per se, or it depends on the overarching rule of who is it tabled to for an action be taken place. But Honorable seemed to have a comment about how recommendations.
We have draftsmen in that parliament.
So how is it?
Definitely, when you are giving recommendations, we just don't write like you're writing to your girlfriend. You really have to know this is an issue where money has really disappeared or there is a corruption element. Then the recommendation should be appropriate to suit that action.
Do you remember one recommendation in your mind, in your career? Or do you have to remember one?
Maybe Timothy can go
just
up
two recommendations that I can quickly remember. But before I mention those ones, the action taken reports that we are mentioning here, I don't know if we are in the same space. The 11th Parliament has introduced a system of accountability where their recommendations are picked and given to the line ministries. Okay? So House is going to then make a resolution, and that recommendation is taken to the respective ministry.
So Timothy, how is that on omnibus rulings?
So the current parliament, as a practice, they have taken it to be, it's not persuasive. It's a directive. The current parliament and the executive has come to the floor of parliament and accounted on each and every resolution that House has taken. That happened during the last year.
Will that happen for the omnibus ruling on the bills?
Now, the same recommend all those are resolutions of whether it's on bill, it's on a matter of national importance, whatever resolution that Parliament has taken. If you look at those resolutions that the ministries were responding, look at the reports; they were heavy, and that's where Parliament actually lost it. There were many recommendations, and the ministers were doing them faster, and they didn't have time to look at each and every element. So those actions reports. So, for example, the resolutions that I would quickly remember, which were adopted in the report of the Human Rights Committee. One of the resolutions, not word by word, but one of the resolutions that the committee put out was that the military should leave. Or actually, one of them would be the military were asked to leave charging civilians before the court martial. That was a very clear resolution. I don't know. I don't remember the exact word by word.
No, it's understood. Yeah, the spirit is understood.
The second one, still in the same report, was the issue about the bail thing. That there was an issue of removing bail on murder. The committee actually came out and gave a resolution on the same. Yeah.
So you see now, the issue of being persuasive, actionable. If you come with a resolution that the military should not take people to court martial, so what?
Civilians.
So will it in effect stop taking them?
And critically,
so
because
it becomes persuasive to the minister.
No,
of Defense.
so honorable.
Okay, for example, if the minister doesn't do,
the minister appears, appears in our committees. By the way, this is the only time when you invite a minister all through my 1+ year in Parliament, I want to promise you, every minister we have invited has appeared. And if you appear with the information, we send you back. You go and prepare it well. And definitely, the executive does not work alone. Judiciary does not work alone. And Parliament cannot implement what is supposed to be by the judiciary. It's complementary.
You see, Honorable,
so you cannot think...
Honorable,
here I disagree with you. Yeah?
The case of court-martial. You have told Honorable Sempinya that the resolution of the Committee of Human Rights, which is adopted by the plenary for that case, is that don't take people, civilian, to court-martial. And then the next day,
there is a
somebody is arrested, taken to court-martial. What will you do?
Of late, have you had this? And we're following it with the amendment of the law.
You see,
and that's why we have over 90.
To take it there, you know what would happen in such a situation is that once the army has taken a civilian to a court-martial, it's a judicial process. What they will tell you is, he has appeared in lawful court, you appeal. It now takes a judicial process.
That is your belief.
I do not think you are going to say, Minister, because first of all, remember, resolution is not a law. Resolution is not a law.
But when the law is amended,
there's no way you are going to say...
Was the law amended?
That is the 90+ laws we are looking at from Monday. So and that's why we said...
being a resolution and not a law, there's no way you're going to hold a minister for a breach.
I hear you.
Mr.
I hear you. Honorable Rose Obigah, maybe, and I hear you when you say now those are the laws that you're looking to amend.
Yeah, we're looking at. You cannot just pass a resolution and you leave it hanging.
You have to turn it into a law.
That it should not be drawn to its logical conclusion. And that's why I think if you read Tuesday paper, it's Tuesday or Monday paper.
So maybe the critical question is, between the resolution turning into law, do we still have civilians show up in the court-martial? Let's go to the next conversation.
In principle, we agree.
To add something a bit just on that. So our context, especially for Parliament, you've seen they exercise sometimes power within their mandate and outside. They bear the carrot and stick when it comes to budget. Actually, if Parliament exercises its power to the latter.
Yes.
Although I'm seeing they are not, but they chose to do that. Before we give you any money for the subsequent year,
show us how you spent
this
money.
Have you done this? They have that, but I think many times it's not used. 2, what they did to Minister Namuganza. You're a minister in charge of security or minister in charge of internal affairs. Parliament has passed a resolution that civilians should not be charged or presented before. If a minister, if a civilian appears before a court-martial, actually Parliament is supposed to immediately summon the minister.
Breach of a resolution.
Yes,
for breach of a resolution. And if it's not acted on, they can send him home.
But does it happen?
It doesn't. It does
but
not
no civilian has appeared.
There is a question on accountability. But maybe also to continue this conversation, 37 years later, and this is to try to move to 37 years later, we've had our constitution go through different amendments.
Yeah.
And whereas some are welcome because, you know, as a nation, you grow, and the constitution is also, you know, a document that you need to revisit. The key highlights in the constitution that continue to stay sticky were on, you know, entrenching. And I know this is a sticky point for Mr. Awich, who believes leadership shouldn't change. But we had, you know, the switch in term limits that was very controversial. We had a switch in age limit that's also very controversial. And so for very many times in the amendments that we've had sticky fingers, you know, touch the 1995 constitution to bring it to a place where we don't recognize, you know, the constitution that we have. And we then question whether Parliament is serving the people in regards to making sure democracy is sustained. In regard to that, and because I know amendments are coming and will continue to come, do we hope that there'll be a redemption of the 1995 constitution in making sure that governance and democracy are sustained post-37, because I am hoping that at some point the leadership will change. I'll let you begin, then Mr. Awich can respond to you.
So first of all, for me, one of the tenets of lawmaking process that, especially for the Constitution, it's a constitution is a living document.
Yeah.
And that the way society evolves, the way society is generally, things change.
Mm.
What our constitution, I have not seen. I'm yet to look at those specific articles in the constitution that were entrenched firmly.
Yeah.
And those shouldn't be touched. Probably could only be touched maybe after a specific period of time. We've seen amendments of the 1995 Constitution, and there are quite a number. I've seen before in the current Parliament there have been proposals for the constitutional amendments, but the Speaker has directed that there is need for a wholesome review of the same, and so all the constitutional review, all the amendments for the constitution that have been brought, they have been shelved, awaiting the constitutional the review commission to look into them and probably have a wholesome look into this specific law. And probably many of us who had hope with the appointment of Chairman Mao, that probably with him being in that place, he has championed for better laws. He has championed this for a while, and maybe with him being there, there is some sense of sanity, and probably there is hope that there will be sanity in this area. But speaking largely in terms of the NRM constitution, you know, one of the unique features really of the 1995 constitution, it was amended before it actually had its first birth. It was amended in 1996. Yeah. Before it could eventually have celebrate its. So you can see that there are many interests as far as.
Which amendment was that?
There was an amendment to increase the number of ministers. That was the 1996 amendment, to increase the number of ministers.
Interesting.
Yeah, you can, but that was the first amendment that ever happened. And so you notice that it's a document that we've not while it governs us, the touching of the specific articles has largely impacted of where we are as a society today.
Interesting. And I hear you when you say that, you know, we need to come to a conclusion of whether, when we look post 37 years, can we bank on it? But also the critical question, maybe Mr. Awich, you can come in, is has Parliament been able to check the judiciary and the executive in fulfilling its mandate in these 37 years of its existence? Because whereas a lot of the work that happens in Parliament of oversight of legislation, there is critical need to follow up and to help the other entities of government account. But oftentimes we found that the executive has an overbearing on Parliament, or there is actually a disconnect in interest and in mandate when it comes to, you know, executing their mandate as Parliament.
I actually find like because in this case my interest is like being the ruling party, because we win election and form the executive. So government in effect is our agent. We the party, we are the principal, because it is us who went to the voters and secured those votes that vote for NRM, vote for the NRM flag bearer. So for that, therefore, my interests are more in the executive. So I feel like actually we have been the victims than the thinking that we have the Parliament is a victim, because we have had, so even leave alone 11th Parliament, you have heard Museveni cry that the Bijagali Dam was frustrated because of Parliament, and so many other things. And even when, as executive, you seem to have come with a good mission and vision, either time is lost to something because of Parliament. For example, you have had a lot of fight with the coffee around that. So we feel that Parliament is doing its work because it's really, really on the executive than the executive being on it. all that the executive is doing is that, how much money do you want? Get it. Parliamentary commissions want how much money? Get it. And so that they are facilitated and they are running and they run their own budget. All they have to do is to just ask the executive to release money from the treasury. So the parliament executive, in my opinion, has really not stressed parliament. And even yesterday we had the celebration with Honorable. When they're introducing categories of people, when it came to parliament, they're the first group that the president rushed to take a photo with. And that shows their importance. And of course, you have seen how they have done the censure. Very effective censure with almost 99% turn up. How I wish they would turn up for a debate on education or health and all this. So you can see. Now, that one was because it was the legislature against the executive. So you can see. Now, on the legislature and the judiciary, I have not seen much. I am a lawyer myself, but I have not seen much because there's also a lot of cries about judiciary. Now, what would happen always when we say laws are not frozen, hard and frozen, is because Parliament should have come up to say, there is a cry in judiciary. Which relevant laws can we pass to tighten that?
And I think on that end, the judiciary has asked for the legal aid bill to be passed, so that, you know, justice is swift for people who don't have representation, and to also reduce the burden on Uganda Law Society in providing pro bono services. But for years now, the legal aid bill stays stuck. And I think also the judiciary did a good work in making sure that they ask and, you know, push and lobby for the increase of judges, which happened. But the idea is, whereas it looks like the judiciary and the parliament and the legislative don't have, you know, that point where they meet so much, there's a lot of the work that the judiciary does that is either handicapped if laws are not passed by parliament.
Okay, now even the increasing of the number of judges and rights there too, which was passed as an act of parliament.
Yeah.
You know very well now that judges have very secured tenure to the extent that they almost retire with their salary, with their cars, with their escorts. That one was a move by the executive.
Not parliament.
No, it tabled, a bill was tabled by
Professor. But of course, it came from where? Does it just jump and it went to that? It's good to give credit where it is due. First of all, increasing and improving the status of judiciary. Honestly, this is work by legal and parliamentary affairs. And this goes to executive. You see, we are not fighting against each other. Yeah. We are to complement each other and see parliament receives this and passes it over to executive. Like me, the people of Tegero elected me to be a member of parliament, not necessarily to be on executive as a minister or state minister. And the president did mention that he only wanted fishermen and fisherwomen, not necessarily the capacity. And once we do something to tell executive, look, there is a discrepancy here, it should be taken in good faith, really. It's not that we're trying to frustrate executive. We do not wish executive well. Well, we want it to be ourselves. No. The executive should give us a listening ear so that we explain and why we have done this. And very oftentimes, my conscience is very clear that whatever we have done with the executive, it is really on a good note. My dear brother,
well, let's not fight over the genesis of who started it. But
but you're saying we gathered in big numbers to censor.
Suffice to know is that in the manifesto, the previous manifesto, we had a component of governance and security. And that governance, it was so lumped up together that in the manifesto, there was the issue of increasing judicial officers. And therefore, we knew that when we get the voting, it was part of the manifesto.
And there's a process to achieve that manifesto.
But I believe that the complementary role that the executive and the parliament have speaks to the desired end of having the judicial officers.
If you look, rather than saying fighting each other, if you look at the diction, the choice of words in the Constitution, I think the nearest is checks and balances. But it's not to say each operates on its own. So I don't think it is even worth mentioning the genesis who started it. But I just said we had it in the manifesto. But the process went, we all needed everybody on board. So I was saying that I am yet to see more from the the parliament on the judiciary. For example, if there are cries out there that there's miscarriage of justice, to every problem there's a solution. That is already problem identification. Even HIV/AIDS, there's medicine for HIV/AIDS, only that we have not thought of it. So by me identifying that there's cries of miscarriage of justice, legislature should come up with a medicine. As I said, and I repeat, that to every problem there's a solution, including HIV/AIDS. So if the problem is already a miscarriage of justice, how does Parliament therefore supplement by tying those knots? You may not necessarily pass a legislation direct to judiciary, but you could even pass it, for example, in legislation that curb corruption, in legislation that empowers, say, police, or in legislation that brings in institutions like court checks or something, inspector of courts. In all, where there's a problem, there's a solution. So I still believe that legislature should do something about. Now, what has it happened when there's such gaps, lacuna like in the law? You know what happens? The executive jumps in. How did it do it? The case of Prime Minister going to Mango Court. It was rude, but you could see that there was a lack of how do we address this injustice. So executive now jumps in, which is very unlawful for me as a lawyer. But you know, when you jump in, when the executive now jumps in there, like that crude way the Prime Minister went to court, is to demonstrate that there's a lacuna in a lack of miscarriage justice, which miscarriage justice can only be done by legislative process, by tying it, because the other option would be the appeal, the what, which you really see visibly that there's a breach of justice. So I still believe, Honorable, that the relationship between Parliament and judiciary we need to see judiciary.
Maybe you talk about judiciary and executive, not judiciary.
I think on that note, we're going to end on that note and then take a short break and come back and look at the business of this week in Parliament. Don't go away.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back to Civic Space TV. Take a moment to like, share, and subscribe so that we can continue these conversations. So we want to look into the business of Parliament this week. At the beginning of this week, we had a censure motion. Long after that, we also had, the select committee for the NSSF fund instituted. And we also had an inquiry or a debate on homosexuality in schools. And whereas that's a morality conversation, it's critical to have right now as schools open next week for learners to go back. But when we speak priorities, and that is where I'll come to you, Timothy, when we speak priorities, we had a full house on the censorship of Honorable Persis Namganza. Fast forward, we had a select committee that is outside, and I know that it's at the discretion of the speaker to decide, you know, a committee that can do that. And we have Honorable Mpaka again at the helm of that committee. And so the question, or the conversations around, you know, NSSF, and for a lot of Ugandans, have taken precedence in understanding what is going on and what will happen. So with the IGG probing and the Parliament probing, do we have, you know, in a month or so, a desired report that can help us, you know, have NSSF run? Because I know people are already saving. And two, on the censorship of Honorable Namganza, what happens if, and I don't know what the executive will decide, but what happens from the decisions of the executive in regard to that censure motion? Do we have a reinstatement of another, or having another minister come and serve in that tenure? If he decides not to take action, what happens to the work between Parliament and the said minister? I'll let you dive into that.
So thank you so much, Tricia. And where I stand is that Parliament should not entertain indiscipline, and indiscipline affects the performance of Parliament.
I hear you.
At the face, because there are many things, having an indisciplined force, whether it's Parliament, whether it's a school or whatever, if you have an indisciplined force, sometimes it affects your delivery. This week, what seemed to have come out very clearly is the essential of Minister Namuganza. Clearly looking at her conduct in terms of being requested to appear before the committees, in terms of how she's, in terms of her conduct generally, right from the start when this matter arose, you see that she has a condescending actor in terms of how she conducts herself, and she has some sense of superiority over the rest of the members. I think that she deserved her censure, but also in terms of the question of priorities. The concern, and I hear that many are saying it was a full house. Actually, it was not a full house. It's just that members were packed. But it wasn't a full house. 385 members voted in favor of the motion. 4 members voted in against the motion, and 3 abstained. We have a house of 529 members. You've not added the ministers. It should go to 555 or thereabout in terms of numbers. So you see, there are still others out of the house. But also in terms of priority, looking at how members conducted that specific matter. The concern generally, I think, from where many of us come from, is not that it shouldn't have happened. It's just that the same effort, as we mentioned earlier, should cut across. When we're talking of matters to do with health of this country, we need to see those numbers. When matters of human rights are raised, the same matters should, education and what have you, we should be able to see that kind of effort, that kind of energy. You've seen the Auditor General report, which has just been released, which the Auditor General presented to the Parliament the last week. If you look through it, you see there are a lot of irregularities cited by the Auditor General, including the losses which are being cited. I saw URA is being cited to have caused the loss. I think they didn't charge some taxes or on gold amounting to around 360 billion.
Wow.
And there are many other agencies. You see there is a lot of loss payment towards missing government staff and what have you. So you notice that if Parliament chose to focus its energy in right places, clearly we are likely to have. We've seen sometimes House has had to stop conducting its business because ministers are not on the floor or they are not appearing. Partly because the sense that there is very little that can happen to us.
I hear you.
Parliament has spoken very loudly, and I think they have been heard. The demand is that the same voice should be put on other on other places.
I worry, and rightly so. Like maybe also, Honorable Obigah, you can speak to that, because in all sense, I hoped that the censure motion would come in principle to maybe the work the minister does, and maybe in question would be the Naguru land saga. It would be ideal to scrutinize, understand, come to to an investigation of, in regard to performance, you failed in this regard. But it took a turn where we no longer could tell, was this a personal battle or was this a principle of discipline and decorum? And arguably so, because on the outside looking in, people were waiting for, conversations around what the minister's mandate is as regards to the Naguru lands. And how far had they come? Who had acquired the land? Can we have, an interrogative, trajectory happen around understanding the small details in regard to that land? But the conversation was lost on discipline that would have not taken center stage in conversations that we see come out of Parliament.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really happy that I have a second chance to explain this. For those who think it is a battle between the minister and the speaker that has led to censure of my sister, I've actually lost it totally. Oh, yeah. First of all, as the questioning of the minister on this Naguru land, as the committee wanted the facts, the minister became offensive and defensive, refuses to appear, and starts bringing other issues which were not part of what they wanted to know. Actually, it is her who dragged all this to come to the speaker. If there reached a time when everyone was like, just say sorry, because it's human to error. And she just said, if there is anyone, who is this anyone? This is not how to say sorry. And then she started going to media. Can you imagine saying the new MPs lack capacity? They, we need to be reoriented. And you go through her CV, for Christ's sake. You find a lot is lacking. This is just a person who was just getting a diploma yesterday. So where does she get the guts? A diploma in law, not even a degree in law, where you do land law and you really study it. And then she has the guts to insult everyone. But we are not sober. You are not sober. You are bootlickers. You are licking Anita's shoes. This just asking her to appear. Did it really have to go that level, really? Pride and prejudice. We all have leadership. And, Uganda Defense Forces up to today is doing so well because of discipline. And she calls herself a princess. I did mention once I was a princess of Lubara, Agofe Kingdom. And honestly, the first thing they do for princesses is to really take you on that line of discipline, humility. But we didn't see this. It's not good to be offensive. So that issue of Naguru is not lost. The next minister will have to appear. She cannot appear before Parliament and have to come and talk. If she wants to remain in that office, it depends on the appointing authority. But she will not appear in our Parliament issues. No. We don't now regard her as a minister. Yesterday, I saw her masquerading, still standing as Minister of Land. It's shameless. Really shameless. The day people will start being shameful in this country, other than diverting issues, people are so diversionary. People are saying Parliament is only full on issues when Speaker wants. One, Speaker directs when committees should sit. Like on this day, every business of Parliament came to a standstill. All of you have to go to the House. We were not in committees. The following day, the whole of Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee was held in looking at these 90+ laws and bills. We couldn't be in the House. And this is so crucial. The following day, the budget committee is on. I was in the house. Now, people want us to, you know, if you are going to throw a stone on every barking dog, you will not move. For me, my conscience is very clear. I was sent to do work. Like for 1 or 2 weeks from next week, I'll not be in the country. And if somebody does not see me, they'll say, oh, you see, this one just came to censor. But you know, I'm deployed to go and get the money for malaria. So Parliament did not only turn up, just as my brother said, just to censor. Yeah, how about when we have bodies of our colleagues laid? We are also there to pay our last respect. How about when you are passing the budget? How about, that is when every other business of Parliament stops. You have only one activity. 2, I wish people knew what a member of Parliament does. Today, right now I'm seated here. I can tell you I have already attended 6 meetings. They want you. The speaker says, you go and represent me there. The committee chairperson is calling you. The NGOs are calling. The entities are calling. Ministries want you. The community back home, the district chairman is assigning you. The district cow has called. The ministers, oh, the other day you raised this issue. Can you come to my office and we sort it? Now, you cannot be in 3, 4 places at once. You first have to do that, and then, but we move in shifts. I'm normally in the last shift that leaves Parliament. I first go and do others, then other people come, they go also, you know, you have, like, we have campfire this evening to discuss environment. And you find you arrive in your house past midnight. You have not been with a man anyway. You have not been drinking, but you have been doing state duty. So I really want to dispute that it is not true. We don't want to do Parliament work, but because there is a lot to be done in the shortest time possible. And you also have to make sure Speaker appreciates that your committee is doing good work. So the other committees have to pull up. I remember one day, legal committee, we left at 2:30 a.m. in the morning. She said, tomorrow, if you don't present everything about all the entities that report to legal, you are finished. We remained. Other members went, but out of the ladies were only 2, me and the chair. We remained to see that you really put your best. And this is not where you pull people like goats. Every other constituency out there should now be able to look at his or her member of Parliament. What is my member doing? And I cannot speak for everyone, honestly. So everyone should pull up. These are good checks and balances. You are not doing well here. Can you improve? Some MPs, by the way, who are on my committee, I did not know them. Until when the report came on participation. Others didn't appear. Around 5, sir, they didn't. At all, they didn't surface. So it's on individual business, but we try. We really try. We try to show commitment, and we promise. But it's not about witch hunting, Namugaja. No, here we are boot lickers. Thank God if you can lick the boot of your boss. Why not? But that is not what it is.
Interesting. Let me bring Mr. Awich in. And on matters in Parliament, one matter that is still sticky for me as a citizen is, and we talked about miscarriage of justice, is the fact that we have 2 legislators that have been they were granted bail, rearrested, and for a year and more, they've been, you know, in prison. And the unfortunate bit is, I don't think this matter has gotten enough time to be debated on the floor of Parliament, because there is representation of these constituencies that is lacking in Parliament. And they ought to be able to represent their constituencies. But then also there is also a miscarriage of justice in regards to the right to bail. And so when Parliament sits on a daily basis, one thing continues to, you know, disturb me of how are we very comfortable missing 2 legislators for more than a year without, you know, coming to a logical conclusion on why they shouldn't, you know, be arraigned in court, because the judgments of court have been too many. it starts to look shady. How do we, you know, marry the urgency that the Passes Namganza issue got and the lack of urgency in making sure this legislature, these MPs come back into the House?
Well, I first of all, I hope to share the same sentiments that Mr. Chemonges said. I don't think I can package it any better. In that, if you want to marry the argument with Namuga, for us we are saying, put the same effort that we saw put. Across the board. And then I was thinking that the rule of procedure says when plenary is going on, committees don't. Do they go?
No, they go. Because when there's an urgency, what plenary needs is only quorum. And now if you are to present tomorrow, and you have, you know, some of these directives from documents that come from executive, and they need quick attention, they need response. So Parliament has to quickly maneuver.
Then, in that case,
to do,
are you not saying that it goes back to priorities, in that there are some sittings where committee wants full attendance in the quorum, or it is just by coincidence? Because how comes that this one, there were no, on this fateful day, there were no other committees?
I said the speaker directs.
Yes, so we are saying, it basically comes down to a point that the same energy, the same direction that is given, the same priority that is chosen, that you chose to direct today, or you chose to direct today to business X, and you chose tomorrow to not to direct on business Y.
Awich, I hope you got me right. I said, and I want to repeat, that these other issues only take one day.
Which issue?
Like, for example, when I say they bring maybe a body of one of our colleagues, they will, for us to pay our respect, it goes. This sense, I think, they were presenting it, and it was something of one day. Like, for example, when we want to pass a bill, the speaker directs, all other business says, stop, get to the House, we need to do this.
So suppose now it was an issue of the House.
If you do this every day,
or education.
It happens. It happens.
Okay, fine.
But you are not following Parliament, you are biased. You only zero yourself.
But for us, we are still maintaining the ground that discretionary move where you choose
when business
must stop and when it must not. We are saying, please,
it is occasionally.
That should be discretion. I mean, judiciously exercised. It should be exercised that befit the face and the aspirations of the people. That you are judiciously, as a speaker, using your discretional power to choose to stop business for item X and not for item Y. Now, to the other issues that you touched about the non-representation by detained members of Parliament. You may not even mention these names, assuming it was her tomorrow or next day somebody else. I think that's what we are saying. You see, this is what we are saying. That problem identified is problem half. So is this an issue of a lacuna in the law? Either substantive law, whether constitutional or an act, or in the rules of Parliament. So as we said, society is dynamic. It is not frozen. So it is these openings that now makes us either to examine the Constitution or an act of Parliament or rules of Parliament. That in the event that a member of Parliament has not lost a seat, is either sick in the hospital for long or is detained for, because some hospitalization can take 2-3 months. Okay, but you can talk. So it is now an eye-opener. In the event that a member of Parliament, for whatever reason, or for lawful reasons, cannot be in the House, what happens? So do we go and tackle the law in that? I think that is it. But on the case of, you said right. Did you say right to bail?
Right to bail, yes.
Is there something called right to bail?
No,
What
I'm
is that
imagining
animal?
because
What is that animal?
their right to bail was that they were
Repeat it. No, repeat.
They have
Did
a right
you
to
say
bail,
right to
yes.
They
bail?
have a right to bail.
No, there's nothing called right to bail.
But it's
Please.
a discretion to grant.
It is
It's a
right to
discretion.
apply for bail.
Yeah, right.
It
to
is
apply
called
for
right to apply for bail. There's no
But they're
animal
not
called right to bail.
No, I imagine because the
That is a
courts,
small thing.
because
So,
the
no,
courts
it is not small,
granted
because if
bail.
you see, when you put it right to bail, it means
to
you are
apply.
violating it.
Because
And
they were
therefore-
granted bail. And so they have a right to bail. Court gave them bail only for them to be rearrested. And that is where my challenge is.
But still, I want to say they had the right to apply for bail.
Which they applied to. They were
And
granted
if your
bail,
facts are
then
right,
they were
granted.
rearrested.
If your facts, you see, and this is the whole debate in Parliament or among legal practitioners and the government for that case. The issue of right to apply for bail, which many people mistake to be right to bail, and the two are different, is that if a bail is granted, take for example now,
Which was in this case.
if for example, Mr. Tom killed 60 people on the street and he got a bail, did you know that government, the state, the prosecution has no right to appeal? In all judicial matters, you have right to appeal, except to appeal on bail. That is why when states have facts and evidence, states arrest you for other things. If there was right to appeal against that bail, DPP would appeal immediately. But because the law provides that even if somebody has killed on the street 60 people, when he gets a bail, you have no right to appeal against that bail. So the only option that state always have is that you arrest the person on other facts. And this is what is happening. Because the state feels strongly that the court has granted the bail. And me as DPP, I cannot even appeal. And yet you can appeal on any other thing, including death, up to Supreme Court. But on bail, you have no right of appeal. Other matters you can appeal to, from magistrate to high court, to a court of appeal, to Supreme Court. The only non-appealable matter is a bail. So states, when they have facts, they will always hold the suspect on another thing. So that is what the state has done, because state feels strongly they have matters on other facts. So, and that is the debate between right to appeal or right to apply for bail.
Yes.
I mean, right to bail and right to apply. So, but for the start, let's know that there's nothing called right to bail. You only have right to apply. Now, if they exercise their right to apply and
they were
court
granted bail,
and this is why I'm telling you that because of that lacuna, that's why there was a need to amend that law. Because the lacuna in the law is that the DPP's hands is tied. Once it is granted, even if you know in broad daylight so and so has killed 50 people, once it is granted, you don't appeal. He said, why? And yet the state you can appeal on other things, including death, up to Supreme Court. So that is why it is. But I think for now, the state has its facts, and that is why they are holding them. I don't want to venture in that area. But I think what is worth examining is a matter which I think is a gap in the law, is where an MP cannot access the house, whether because of sickness, whether because of sickness or what do you do? Can we provide, because we have had cases where people appear to court through other media.
Virtual.
Yeah, through virtual. So I think it's an area of examination. But the only thing I wanted to add on the bail is first to clear that there's nothing called right to bail. It is a right to apply. And then I also wanted our viewers to know that a bail granted is not appealable. That's why the state is always lost. And that's why the state, you have got bail on this. As you get out, state arrest you on other things, because the state feels they have evidence on other matters.
And on that note, Afande Awich, because if I have been granted bail and immediately the state arrests me, isn't that a miscarriage of justice? And also, the critical question is, because we know justice delayed is justice denied, if I have a constituency that I represent in the House and I have not had their views, I have not presented their views on the floor of Parliament over a year, does my representation make any more sense at that point? And does the judiciary then stand to have, an explainer on why there is, a delay in justice being delivered? Because it becomes a joke if I am coming to, and today we have one of the honorables is sick and is, I wonder if to death this conversation will be had. God forbid he dies. But the delay in serving justice is also a delay in service to these constituencies. But also it's problematic because it is not something that is critical to the House as we speak.
I think there are two things that we have to hold separately. There's delay of justice and then the possibility of representation where you are indisposed. And I think we have dealt with the other one, that there's a gap in the law, either in procedural law or in substantive law or otherwise. So that one we dealt with it now. Delay of justice, I think, needs to be examined on case-by-case basis. And as I said, in the particular case of the members of parliament, it needs understanding the facts. For example, who are we conversant with whatever subsequent appearance in court has taken place? I am not. What was the argument? Why was it delayed or why was it denied? So it's a factual matters that needs a command of the facts about it. So which I am not privy to now. But as I said, two issues must be handled separately. The possibility of an MP, whether by sickness or otherwise, who cannot appear in the vicinity of the House, that one I think we dealt with it, that clearly there's a gap there, whether in the Constitution or an Act of Parliament or rules of Parliament, it needs to be addressed. And as I keep saying, problem identified this problem I have. To every problem, there's a solution. It's only that we have not thought about it. So I think that can be thought about. But on the delay of justice, in the particular case of the MPs, I don't have much to say, apart from the explanation of the right to apply to bail and why states tend to arrest for other, on other facts.
After being granted
because
bail.
The state cannot appeal. It is a non-appealable ground. A bail is a non-appealable. You can't appeal. Even if a judicial officer, for example, arrogantly or erroneously releases somebody, and then you say he has already got bail, finished, no appeal.
Maybe what I can add, because she said, why is it that Parliament has kept quiet? This debating that would be prejudicial.
It would have edges.
No, but I mean, an issue that is in court cannot be debated nor discussed. But we know where they are. And we have the state that is handling the case. And once they say they are still collecting evidence, you cannot do much. But the truth is, in a constituency, there is not only one person. But at least there is a woman MP somewhere. There is we just pray that their cases will be disposed of. Thank God now there are dates scheduled to start the hearing. Yeah, that is our prayer. They are innocent until found guilty.
True.
We can't start legislation that, when you are maybe disposable, then there must be a law. Tomorrow it can be you, and you are innocent until proved guilty. So it's better the status quo remains. But if there is any proposal for amendment, fine. It should be able to be directed to Parliament. But honestly, if state finds a case, let's wait, let's be patient. We pray the people of these two constituencies abide by this and really accept that. Let law take its course. It's outside our hand now. It's really beyond Parliament, but we follow them up. A Human Rights Committee has gone to see them on 2 occasions. But individually, we have gone to see these our colleagues. Even when they say they are very sick, they are in this hospital, in that hospital, we go. We even discuss with medical officers how best they can be treated, because these are colleague legislators. Yeah, and both of them had some kind of complications. Parliament arranged the doctors to treat them, to see that their life does not come to an end just because of negligence. So this is how far Parliament can go. We feel for them, but the case is not in our hands. Yeah, there's the judiciary, and we're legislative. Yeah, we work together. And we don't have to antagonize each other. If they say there's a case, let them prove the case. If they say they are innocent, definitely they will be released. But of course, other compensations and so forth. We are not happy because it can be us. But whatever took place, we are not privy. Yeah, we cannot have authority to it. So honestly, I would think we don't go further with it.
Yeah, about the possibility for an indisposed MP appearing, say, on Zoom.
On Zoom.
MPs
debate on the floor.
Many appear on Zoom. Very many. Yeah. We have both Zoom and physical appearance. We have Zoom links. But you know, being in a custody is different from being hospitalized. So when you are in prison, in custody, in prison.
That was the idea. That is not yet proven guilty.
No, it can jeopardize.
And it's still an MP. Can he debate in the House?
It can jeopardize court processes. And at times the judiciary or that arm of government prefers let them remain.
Is there a legal prohibition, for example?
Well,
is there a bar? Is there a legal bar?
You see, leaving me, who is a suspect with a phone, I can use it for anything. The provision Parliament has given for judiciary is when you are going for court hearing. That's when you can appear on Zoom. Not for those. Now, how many people are there? There are PSs, the PAs, and many.
Because
so
then
many.
That means everyone would be able to run their businesses.
Let me run my business. Let me also check my wife. Let me do this.
I hear
so it's better. And it can really mar the whole process of the process of handling the case. So to avoid those other issues which are in courts, maybe reaching out to the supposed to be witnesses and threatening or buying them or whatever. So there, it's better there without the phones and so forth.
I hear you.
So the law has not provided for that. So it's better the status quo remains. Otherwise, people will abuse it. Today, we are talking about it in good faith. Tomorrow, somebody will use it for other things.
You see, well, I'm just trying to think aloud. If you had such a provision, which is provided for in the rules will be very clear. It's not just throwing it out and saying you a detainee have a phone. The rules will be very clear to implement us, including custodial officers, that a room is created in a prison, for example, a room designated or gazetted for a particular member of parliament, and there's a screen there too with gadgets, so that he follows particularly. So it's not just a matter of throwing it, you throw it with rules and guidance.
I think where we are seated
you have not been to prison, I know. You actually don't know what is there.
No,
what you are talking is imaginary. It's not the real situation.
It's something which is impossible. It's something which is impossible.
No, I hear you, and I also hear. But what I understand, and even for regular
a guideline with a time frame, with specification, with a place.
First of all, for you to debate.
And let me help here. I think on a regular and in the processes of justice is that suspects at some point in time do not have access to the outside world as a regular citizen. And so in that regard, first as a citizen, because you're under, a process, a judicial process, there are some liberties that are denied to you. And so that actually may also jeopardize a judicial process that you're going through. So I understand on that ground whether the legislation can be created to incorporate, detained members of parliament to be able to represent their constituencies is something that maybe the parliament can debate that. But as we wind this conversation, one thing, and that is where I'm going. And one thing that continues to happen is that, the opposition has now taken on a stance that is a bit different from past opposition members or past opposition teams in parliament. Before, or even in the 10th parliament, there was a lot of, animosity between the ruling government and the opposition, even in the House. You would feel it, you would see it. there would be brawls and fights going on. And the stance of offensive was that even work would stall because the two wouldn't meet eye to eye. Today, under the leadership of, Honorable Matthias Mpuga, there seems to be, not really unity, but unison in noise, in action, as regards to, decisions from the House. Today, it's hard to tell which ground the opposition stands on, because as a House, it almost feels like there is a bit of unison happening within the House. Do we see a different contribution of the opposition going forward in regards to legislation, but also in actions that come out of the House?
Thank you, Tricia. And probably maybe I just comment something on the
yes, conversation please.
This. In other jurisdictions, a member of parliament is a very, very serious person in the society. It's in our context, we've since a bit diluted that. We take the members of parliament a bit lighter. But if you see Honorable Obigah here, you are seeing Tegero, you are seeing the people of Uganda. And anything she says, anything she does, it's the people who
have sent her.
Yeah. And so I think that it's good to think within, outside what is currently happening. It should be okay to actually think of what would a member of parliament who is in a different setting, whether it's maybe in a setting of a prison or wherever, or hospital, whatever, how can he, within those circumstances, still execute his mandate? I think the dynamics therein, what he should hold, where he should appear, those could be discussed. But I think that the idea of a member of parliament, wherever he is,
should be able to represent.
How can he best exercise his mandate wherever he is? But also, I think maybe that's it for that. But in light of the opposition and their mandate within parliament, you saw that the opposition under the leadership of Mpuga at the start of the 11th parliament came with some sort of a legislative agenda, which they sought to champion. And even towards at the start of the second session, you saw them addressing the House and the general public on their specific agenda, saying our specific targets would be towards things to do with accountability, electoral reforms, and what have you. And the challenge also with the opposition is that the public seems to be expecting a very aggressive opposition, jumping in the table and doing a bit of drama to send the point. We've not yet been in a space where sanity can prevail but still achieve the goal. This week, we saw the leader of opposition expressing his anger of a meeting that had been scheduled between the Minister of Security, I think the Minister of Internal Affairs, to discuss a matter that the LOP addressed previously regarding the detention and what they had called abductions. So the Deputy Speaker then had requested for a meeting to discuss that and settle the same matter. So opposition, the leader of the LOP was expressing his concern, but they later reconvened that. So in an ideal setting, Mpuga would be jumping all over to put the point across. But at this, what we are seeing now is the Deputy Speaker convening a meeting to discuss that. The outcome of that, I think sometimes it can be debated. But if something can be achieved in a subtle way, I think that will be the best. But I think also partly Parliament being a center of interest, and also you must sometimes, I think politicians, you must play to the gallery, not just to the. You must sometimes play to the gallery. You've seen very many of them doing that to see that our member of parliament is doing work. But also that speaks to the misconceived and the misunderstood roles of a member of parliament. That a member of parliament, to be heard, you must shout, you must do this, you must do the other. There are many members of parliament who even don't speak on the floor, but they do a lot of work at the committee level. A lot of it. You've seen recently this week the member of the chairperson of the budget committee presenting the budget, the report of the budget framework paper. there are many members who contributed to that report. But they are going to debate it, yes, but there is a lot of contribution by members at the committee level where much of the work is done. And no one you may not know that, Honorable Rose did this. At the floor of Parliament, she may not speak, but her contribution is already
in the committees.
Yeah, so I think sometimes also it's the nature of the politics, but also you're looking at the specific roles of the opposition in this context of our discussion, is to put the executive into check and to demand for accountability.
As we wind down, is this the People's Parliament?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy to have been here. I will always come back, but most importantly, we have decided to work in the light, to walk in the light and do everything transparently. Even when we said the safe houses are not there, the opposition members of Parliament signed because we worked together. We walked the journey together. Everything that the 11th Parliament wants to do, it should be done transparently, because when there is maybe Ebola, or when there was Corona, or when there is no clean water, it affects everyone. It doesn't choose and say hunger is only for Obigah, who is in NRM, or it's for Mpuga, who is in opposition. So that is why you see the level of animosity has really reduced. We have decided that let's work and do the right thing. There's nothing we hide from opposition, and they bring the points, we discuss it at committee level, and that is it. I'll be grateful to appear again for this parliamentary
the next
show.
one. Thank you very much. Afanda Awich, as we go away, what's the way forward, and not just for Parliament but also for the citizens, especially in citizen agency, in holding their parliamentarians accountable?
First of all, I also like to share the question that you asked her. Is this a People's Parliament? Yes, it is. It is a People's Parliament, was elected by the people, and therefore the representative of the people. And we love them. Now, as for us in NRM, we are even lucky to have the majority. I work in the secretariat. We are the ones who give the flag to our... And we do think, because we hold a very vigorous primary, so we do think that we get our best cadres, okay? Because we have a very vigorous primary, which is almost as if you are having a final election. We believe we have our best cadres, and we send them there, and we are the majority. So it is our parliament, or the People's Parliament. However, we still think that the perceptions that go around them needs to be cleared in the best interest of the country, in the best interest of the people. So, going forward, we shall expect, and we are, as a party, we are going to devise a system of interfacing with our MPs. Because interfacing and agreeing on doing it better will help us. For those who, for example, will want to seek re-election and they will get the flag, it will be easier for us as a secretariat to market them. So we do believe that we need to work together, and we're developing a system of how to follow up, so that we make sure that our very best cadres that we gave them flag are performing, so that maybe not all will want to come back to Parliament, but for those who will want to come, we want to be sure that sailing through in the next election is easy. We can only make it easy for the party if we do this well. So therefore, that's why we raise these perceptions about them in good faith. But over and above, they are our Parliament, and they are people. So the only way forward is to try to put it better. And that's why you kept hearing me and Chemonges saying, if only all efforts are geared to every noble cause. But for now, it's our Parliament, and I can't even say the contrary, because I, as a party, have the majority. And as I repeatedly say, we have a vigorous primary election, and we do think that we give flags to our very best.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen and lady. And it's always a pleasure to have you on this show. And I'll meet you in the next episodes as we, find a way of making sure we understand the business of Parliament. And to you, our viewer, I think my biggest recommendation and credit was to the people of Uganda this week, who who exercised their citizen agency in making sure that we understand the business that was happening at the Entebbe airport. Accountability is going on, and redress is happening because you had a voice, you used it, and you spoke. Thank you very much for joining us this week. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye.